My father once said to me, Batty, meaning my daughter, you don't look 18, you dress 18. And that stayed with me. And now I want to dissect it with you. Recently, I've been going down a rabbit hole of dressing my age. I'm 35 and recently came across a TikTok by the Financial Diet. And I want to explore it with you. I want to have this conversation with an open mind. And of course, through the lens of autism, philosophy, and self. What does it mean to be yourself? And of course, dress your age. Dressing your age is obviously a construct, and those constructs exist for a reason. Are the reasons valid? Should they be reconstructed, or should we demolish it altogether? Deconstruction doesn't mean to destroy, it means to take apart and understand. So let's deconstruct the idea of dressing your age.
When they say a woman has to slow down, become smaller, take up less space, calm down, no. Absolutely not.
If you're new to my channel, my name is Brittany Simon, and I'm an autistic woman who likes to explore ideas through a philosophical lens. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around, like, subscribe, and I look forward to reading your comments in the sections down below.
Nice.
This is exactly why I tell women to follow fashion and style influencers who are older than them. Tell me you would be scared of aging if that was the blueprint.
This topic is personal, and I don't want to make anyone feel alienated while having it, but we will be discussing things like privilege, your money background, your cultural background, religious expectations, and of course, how gender plays a role in the construct of dressing your age. And of course, something that cannot be ignored is the trauma-related parts of this conversation. So Chelsea is ADHD. I'm autistic, though suspicious that I might be ADHD as well. I was also diagnosed with borderline in 2017, and a lot of my audience members tend to be neurodivergent and or borderline, though personality disorders are also considered neurodivergency. So let's just umbrella term neurodivergent, which means that our perspective of ourselves is going to be technically different from a neurotypical person. So we're going to review Chelsea's TikTok and deconstruct it to have this conversation. But remember that Chelsea herself isn't a neurotypical woman, so it's kind of exciting to see another neurodivergent woman who is financially secure and successful and quite fashionable have a conversation around her own, dressing her age issues that she's faced herself. So let's go ahead and check out the TikTok. Let's deconstruct it together. And remember that our life experience is going to play a role in how we digest this topic. And I think going into this, the question that I want to keep in the forefront of our minds is, who would we have been if we weren't traumatized, neurodivergent, in a neurotypical world, and if we weren't the adults trying to recreate a childhood we never had? I know for me, the more I made money, the more I wanted to recreate the childhood I never had in relation to feeling free and how I expressed myself. I grew up really religious, really strict background, very strict on what I could wear. And I think the more I was free of that construct, I allowed myself to dress more free. And so now that I'm at this age where I'm safe, I'm secure, I live on my own, I have my own money, I'm now moving into a very, very, very healthy, stable version of myself that is now questioning, what is my fashion statement? What is my style? How do I want to express myself? What does dressing my age look like? And I think it's not going to be one size fits all. So I'm very excited to hear your thoughts in the comment sections down below, because I do think that we're all going to have a different answer to these questions. This is the host of the Financial Diet. So here's Chelsea's reaction to a comment she got. The comment is, and this is from her viewer, it says, is your intention to style yourself to look significantly older than your 35 years? I am not judging at all, genuinely just curious, since it's not something I see a lot of women do. So, okay, Chelsea's 35, I'm 35. Let's see how she responds to this.
So I get this question or some variation of it essentially every day, and I want to unpack it because I feel like apps like this have just truly cooked our brains when it comes to aging and especially personal style within aging. Now you can click on her comment to see the outfit she's referring to, but for what it's worth, I don't think that outfit, which is just wide leg pants, a cardigan, and heels, particularly screams that much older than 35. And in fact, I wear things all the time that I would say skew older. But also, when we think about dressing like a 35-year-old, what does that even really mean to people? Because to me, it means dressing like an adult. 35 is very much an adult, getting on middle age. And one of the things that means is that the super trendy stuff that I see on apps like this really aren't for me. They're not for my lifestyle, they're not for my career, and they're also not for my style goals. Because one of my goals, for example, is to buy things that will last years, if not decades. And that kind of inherently means they can't be super trend driven. But also, as that aforementioned 35-year-old adult, what do I want to convey when I go out the door? Me personally, I want to convey competence and maturity. I want to be taken seriously and feel put together. And these are not typically traits that we associate with youth, but that's a good thing. Also, as a side note, that's why those like old money style videos often look so off, because aside from the fact that they're not usually like super well made clothes, they're also being worn by someone who just like doesn't have the years or the gravitas to pull off that kind of ultra sophisticated style. But anyway, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm trying to look older. I'm just not trying to look young. And I feel like apps like this have just like erased the idea that that could also be a goal.
Okay, so obviously very interesting. Her bubble, her perspective. Love to hear your thoughts. When I first saw this video, I definitely thought to myself, okay, like Chelsea's coming from a very particular perspective. She is a professional. You know, we're both YouTubers, but different kinds of YouTubers. And what does that mean in reflection, like in relation to my own life? And what does it mean in relation to the idea of like not trying to dress young though? All my life, and I think this goes back to what my dad said to me, I have always wanted to dress younger. I think I've always wanted the freedom to recreate, again, those fashion statements I couldn't as a teenager in my 20s. And as I move into my 30s and now I'm preparing for my 40s, I am preparing for a transformation. I am somebody who collects nice pieces of clothing that wants to keep them for a long, long time. But I'm also a person who's purchased a lot of fast fashion. I have spent a lot of my money buying clothes that were 1 to 10 wears, or, you know, maybe I'd even keep them past ripping because I didn't have the money to replace them. I mean, realistically, we have to talk about privilege when we talk about dressing your age. And we do have to talk about privilege when we talk about dressing authentically. When we're authentic, we're risking breaking the construct that is sort of there to signal where you fall into place. And if you don't want to fall into place, then dressing rebellious makes a lot of sense. But if you want to fall into place and be seen as respectable, then there's also a standard. Currently in media, there are a lot of males who are in the forefront and are considered leaders, but are deeply immature in their fashion sense. That's not to say that these people are less than because they're dressing specifically, but I do think the reason they can dress specifically is because they're sort of privileged. And they're men. There's something about a man who's allowed to show up to an interview looking like he hasn't showered or brushed his teeth and is still seen as intelligent that I don't see lots of women or femme-presenting people getting away with. I see a very hard standard pushed against women specifically, or femme people, by femmes themselves, by women, by a lot of people, even people that I meet who are agender, non-binary. They have a tendency to require more out of sort of these like AFAB people. And I think that is the patriarchy at play and misogyny, but it's internalized. We all suffer from it. But more than that, I think it's just a mistake we make to vicariously live through others and to think that if I can't attain it, but they can, then I want to see them do it. I think with celebrities and famous people and people of status, there's a hope that they will dress in a way that we can vicariously live through. One of my favorite trends on TikTok is older people showing up on the app and younger people telling them how to look better. I think the dilemma we face is, where is the appropriate line here between criticizing someone for being authentic and giving somebody a helpful tip? We always want to help people, but maybe your help is actually a hindrance. The road to hell is paved in good intentions, right? Chelsea brings up a really important point about not wanting to dress younger. And I think that as I age, I realize that in order to dress more my age, I also have to invest money into that statement. So when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of money. I put a lot of things on credit cards. I was very bad with my money. And I just bought a lot of fast fashion, right? I did buy a few key pieces that I still have to this day, but those key pieces were not the prices of fast fashion. They weren't $5, $10, $2. They certainly, they weren't even $30. They were much more expensive. So now at this stage of my life, even when I'm like trying to save up my 6 months of, monthly expenses for emergencies, when I'm trying to save up a down payment for a house, the last thing on my list is new clothes. But yet, in order to sort of present and signal to the world a sort of, I've arrived at a certain place, a part of it needs to sort of be allocated towards fashion. And it's interesting because as I age, I realize, I know, as much as I don't want it to be true, the world judges you for how you look, and the world judges you for how you present. And opportunities like networking, like actually work events, can be predicated on that expression of self. So in some ways, it's like a privilege to dress authentically. and to not have to set a certain standard. And then in some ways, it's just like bad business.
Didn't I tell you to get some better suits? I spent $500. For how many suits? 5.
In one way, it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You can dress how you want. And like, there's nothing bad that happens to you. But how is that possible? How is it possible that you're dressing exactly how you want to, even though it's against the status quo and you're having no consequences? Because I don't know very many people who have zero consequences for how they express themselves. I mean, you can take it down to, the military discriminating against Black Americans, right? For hairstyles. You can just look at the way that even curly haired people, I have gotten comments my whole life about, oh, you look like you haven't showered. You look unorganized. And look, my hair is very specifically fashioned today. I picked it out. I specifically wanted it to look bigger and frizzier. I specifically wanted this aesthetic, but this aesthetic is also beautiful to me because I think it looks great on curly haired people. But I'm sure somewhere in the world, somebody's saying, oh, you would look more organized and more professional with straight hair, which is a comment I've gotten throughout my life. So again, to be in a privileged position where you get to be authentic in your dress either says to me, you're not aiming to network or rise above the ranks in your companies or your business or your work, or you are so rich, you don't have to think about it. And so there's a question at play here. Who would we be if we weren't traumatized teenagers trying to reinvent our childhood to be better than it was originally? Who would I be if I had all the money in the world? Because that trend of you're not ugly, you're just poor. Well, you're not unfashionable, you're just poor, right? Okay, who would I be if I had money? And then who would I be if there was no judgment from the constructs? So obviously, if there was no judgment from the constructs, we'd all probably look a little different. But maybe we wouldn't look less or more, we would just look different. So an example, as I get older, I find myself less interested in the fast fashion aesthetic of young people than I did when I was younger, which makes sense, but I'm officially aging out of it. Even the last few years ago, within the last 2 years, I bought things at H&M. So it's not like I haven't walked into an H&M. I just recently realized okay, I think we're done. I remember I was with my best friend. We were at the mall. We walked into Forever 21. We looked at each other and said, oh no, I think we are officially too old for Forever 21. And honestly, I'm officially too old for H&M. And honestly, I'm just too old for fast fashion. Fast fashion, though, is, in quotations, affordable, though very bad for the planet and honestly very bad for everybody involved. But it is within reason, accessible to a lot of us who don't have an extra $1,000 to drop on a few outfits that will stand the test of time. So now at this stage in my life, after being in my 20s and overspending and thinking I was going to unalive by 35 and not thinking about saving my money, now at this stage in my life, obviously money will have to go to a special savings account for clothing, aesthetic, for dressing my age. And I don't mean dressing my age in terms of the number on my birth certificate. I mean dressing my age in terms of the era of my life that I'm in. So my mother probably would say, I wish you would dress your age, Betsy, right? And I'd say, okay, I'm going to work on that. And my mom might think, oh, Brittany dressing her age looks like a preppy, modest kind of person. But when I think about dressing my age, I think about being an eccentric old lady, but with money. When we have these imageries in our head, this imagery of what our life should look like when we dress our age, I think it should be your style, but better quality. I think it should be, who you are, but kind of next level. I use Kat Von D as an example often because I remember watching her, and yes, we all have opinions about her politics. That aside, we're talking about the fashion. When she was younger and she was on her show LA Inc., you could tell she didn't have money. You could tell she was a young, struggling artist. And now you can tell she got money. It shows in the quality. She's still wearing all black. She's still goth. She's still expressing herself the same way. She's still in latex for her music videos, but it's different. And the money is the difference. So sometimes it's about the era of your life in terms of the stepping up. It's kind of like how I learned that in my 20s, the idea of making $50,000 a year would make me feel rich until you make $50,000 a year. And then you realize oh, now I'm at the bottom again of the next stage of money making. And then you make a little bit more money and you're oh, shoot, I still can't afford that thing I was promised sort of in high school, which is a house. I still can't afford a house and I make much more than $50,000 now. And I still can't pull myself up enough. So then I'm sitting here okay, what are we investing our money and time into? It's the era of our life. Slowly but surely, the quality of your life should go up. So then the quality of your clothing should follow. The quality of your food should follow. The quality of your housing should follow. And so the way you exist should go up. I remember when I was in my early 20s. I was living outside my parents' house and I couldn't afford much, but what I could afford was the dollar store. And I would go into the dollar store and I would spend like $20 on 20 different items. And I would feel so rich because I was like, look at all these little fairy, statues and art statues and coloring books and things I just wanted that I could buy and just decorate my rented room and feel like I had some control over my life, right? And now, the dollar store is very good for a lot of things, but I don't need to shop at a dollar store anymore. But when I did need to shop there, because I genuinely couldn't afford anything else, it was really, really wonderful. It really helped me. And it also helped me to look back and say, after 15 years, we don't need to shop there anymore. Because for the last 15 years, we made an effort to step up our game. Again, love a good dollar store, but I don't need to go there out of need anymore. I can go there out of want now. Same thing with fast fashion. I don't want to have to do it. I think it's unethical. I think it's bad for the planet. I think it's bad for people. I think it's just bad all around. I don't want to have to be in a position in my life where I continue to contribute to the bad of the world. No ethical consumption under capitalism, as they say. But I can still do my part by making an effort to categorize dressing my age as dressing in relation to my values and the era of life that I'm in. And so then I will make an effort to save for quality clothing, to maybe buy local, to specifically go to boutique shops, to shop, so local that it feels like I am contributing so much less to the harm of the world. And I know we can't be perfect, but that harm reduction is kind of the point. So again, when we talk about dressing our age, it is a construct. And there is a bullying element to it, right? Like, I don't like the way she dresses. And I can tell because she's not one of us and therefore we get to bully her. No, we're not going to bully people for not dressing their age. That's silly, but also is a part of some construct. So be warned, I want to dress better, not necessarily name brand better, but I want to dress quality better. I want to be community better. I want our communities to, express themselves in ways that challenge the patriarchy, challenge racism, challenge misogyny, challenge all the things we don't like about the world. And that starts with us. So many women spend their time upholding the patriarchy instead of spending that time being authentically themselves. And I think that is, something you have to deconstruct. That ultimately these narratives around dressing your age can be very helpful. Like I think hopefully my version of dressing your age is going to be healthy, right? Dressing with your money and health and your, almost rewarding yourself for getting to that next step of quality of life versus the judgment that comes with not showing up the way people want you to, so they can then morally judge you. Like, I don't want to morally judge you for your clothing. Obviously, there's a context for clothing, and sure, you can use fashion to be hateful, like yay, but we're not going to do that. We're talking about something as simple as expressing yourself differently. As an example, if you go to Chelsea's TikTok and you look at her fashion, well, it's very different from my Instagram. And that's because we're two different bubbles, but yet we have overlap. We're both in the same age bracket. We're both focused on adulting and being, moving into our middle age. We're both focused on, being grown-ups, but I'm also sex positive. I'm also nude friendly. I am also a big proponent of the body is art. And so I run into a different bubble where my version of professionalism involves maybe like great art around the body. Right. I would love to be in the art bubbles as I move forward in my life. And art, very expensive, not cheap. So even being somebody who's interested in the human form in art and what it means to be a person, like that is a very expensive little construct of a bubble, right? But Chelsea and I, at the end of the day, what we're really doing out loud is saying we're middle-aged. Like 38 is middle-aged, like if the average age is here, 75, 74, like we're there. And so moving into my 40s, I really want to reward myself with better clothing and better, expression, better decor, like this is a furnished apartment. I'm grateful to be in it. I'm grateful to have found a beautiful apartment to live in. Will we figure out our place here in the universe, my partner and I? But like even having this bed in the background, it sends a signal to people. Beds in the background were very hip at some point on YouTube, very like 2010, 2015, young girls in their dormitories. But I'm not young and I'm not in a dorm. This is an office space. I just rented a furnished apartment that has a bed in the background. And so it makes the statement for me, but this wasn't my choice. But I'm doing the best I can with it. But I can make a different choice by investing in different furniture pieces, putting this bed in storage, making sure that I make those decisions smart, financially smart, and all in good timing. I think sometimes we also want to rush to adulthood. We want to rush, but it's okay to wait, save up for the thing you want, and then move into that era of your life. And I know for me, what I didn't do when I was younger is one, I didn't save. Two, I spent all my money and I spent it on things that were cheap and meaningless and things that I got rid of every couple years of my life. Every time I've moved, I basically get rid of half my stuff because I don't want to take it with me. I moved to Europe. I got rid of so much of my stuff. I only kept the quality items. And so now moving into this era of my life, I basically only want to invest in things that I think are so quality that I would take them across an ocean, that I would take them on every move I went on, that I would pay moving fees just to keep them. So when I moved to Europe, I brought art. I brought key clothing pieces that I've had for like a decade, and I brought memories, photo albums and journals and things that were meaningful to me. Sometimes dressing your age is so much more than the superficiality of being like, you're 50, you shouldn't look like that anymore, and so much more about what we value. And I really want to value quality things, quality time, quality memories, quality people. I really want to spend my remaining years on earth quality. I feel like you have to know yourself to know which category you're in to really understand why you might be having conflict with this sort of relationship with dressing your age or addressing your gender or addressing your money status or addressing anything. Why are we doing it? Who's it for? Is it for us? Is it for them? Is it because we are trying to bring something to the table? I just watched this documentary about Vogue and the history of fashion and FUBU and all these other things. It was really great. And Anna Wintour is just so consistent in her style. But what was really interesting was all the people around her who were very critical of the fashion eras and how some of the people were like, oh, I hated this era. I hated this look. I hated this vibe. I hate grunge. I hate this. And it was really cool to see all of them have differing opinions about what was cool and what was hip and how all of it is a construct. All of it is made up. We make it up for status. We make it up to bully people. We make it up to feel good about ourselves. We make it up. So if we're going to make something up, we should put more thought into it because that's how much power we have. We have so much power in the way that we express ourselves. And yet, on some level, there's still a thoughtfulness that needs to go into our attempt to be authentic with expression, of understanding of who's going to digest us, who's going to see us, who's going to process us. So like if you come from a religious background and you rebel by being less modest, let's say, or more expressive, or using more colors, or being more exaggerated in your fashion statements, you might feel alienated from that original bubble you're from, right? I know I did. When I was growing up, you couldn't wear things above the knees. And now, I don't even know what that means, but I just remember growing up in a household where, you were rewarded and complimented more when you wore longer skirts. Or if I visit my family, at their family home, if I go home to my parents today, at the age of 35, I have to dress modestly or they won't let me come over. And that's just the reality of some of our family dynamics, some of our cultural bubbles, is that for some of us, we don't have the technical privilege of having families we can just show up. We have to dress appropriately. And that appropriateness can make sense for some and not sense for others. Like I'm sure if you guys are like me, you grew up wearing swimsuits, but I had to wear like shorts and like a shirt, or I had to wear like a modest swimsuit, or, you grew up in these bubbles where, you're not supposed to be dressed like that in front of family, which is like very interesting. It's like a very interesting, there's obviously trauma there. There's obviously things we need to deconstruct, but all of that plays a role in how we age, show up in the world, and dress our age. All of that comes with you. You have to go to therapy. You have to deconstruct. You have to ask yourself, what part of my childhood am I taking into my adulthood? Which brings us back to the beginning question. Who would you have been if you didn't spend your lifetime recreating the childhood you didn't have? Because I guarantee you, if I didn't grow up in such a strict household, I probably wouldn't have spent so much of my money on fast fashion. I probably wouldn't have been focused on trends. I probably would have been focused on staple pieces. And I definitely would have gotten it out of my system being as rebellious and, specific in my fashion statements as a young person. Now, of course, when I say get it out of my system, I mean that type of fashion that I was into as a kid, that MCR meets Hot Topic meets like Devil Wears Prada, or an attempt to be Devil Wears Prada, like this kind of clashing of fashion statements to figure out who I was. I wouldn't have had to worry so much because I think I would have had a better idea of myself in a sense, which means I could have started saving for staple pieces longer, and meaning my finances would have been better. And then, of course, all of the childhood trauma also gave me the complex of wanting to unalive. And if I didn't have that other burden of wanting to unalive, I wouldn't have been thinking about spending all my money. I wouldn't have, gotten $60,000 of credit card debt that I eventually paid off, but I wouldn't have been in that because I wouldn't have been struggling with all those other things. And I think we forget that, again, dressing your age has so much more to do with our past and our childhood and how we came about than we realize. And don't get it twisted that, oh, now that I'm over this young person phase, that I'm going to be some sort of modest Catholic, like pious woman. No, I'm going to be eccentric grandma. Okay. Very colorful, very bold, very great, very wonderful, very lovely, very gay, very great. But it's one of those things where I think it's just going to be elevated. It's not going to be $5 fast fashion anymore. And this will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years. It's going to happen one piece at a time, as many years as it takes to have that classic wardrobe, that classic staple expression of self that's timeless, but also honest. And also it's a collection. One of the things I love is collecting earrings by artists. And the fact that I have these earrings that I didn't just buy for fun, but I bought because somebody made them. That is how I want to look at clothing. That I didn't just buy it but I bought it because, oh, I have a memory for the clothing. I bought it at a particular place or from a specific artist or, whatever it is, whatever happy association you want to put towards that clothing. I want it to be that rather than what it's been for most of my life. Oh, I can wear this for that one event I want to go to, just one single event, and maybe use it for something else. Or, oh, it's $5. I might as well get it. Oh, it's like $20. I might as well get it. It's like, yeah, you can do that. You can buy an outfit just for one event and do something else with it later for sure. Or you can buy something just because it's $5, or you can buy that piece because it speaks to you. And much like the art on your walls, it's something you're collecting. And I think when we start to collect, that shows maturity and aging more than anything. Because as a young person, I never really collected, or rather, if I did collect, I collected for temporary reasons. I think one of the signs of aging, maturity, and status is being able to collect for a lifetime. Because most of us collected when we were younger, maybe to fill out a fantasy, once again, of some childhood thing that was missing. But a lot of us don't have our collections. A lot of us had to sell them because we didn't have money, or we had to sell them because we were moving. I want to reach the spot in my life where I get to collect and I don't have to give away because I prepared, I planned, and this thing is now a part of my life. I just feel like it's different. All right, I'd love to hear from you. Please let me know your thoughts, and I will see you for the next one. Bye.
In my head, in real life I'm in bed, my belly's being fed and I'm okay. I'm just fine, yet all I do is whine, not to you in my mind, cause I know I don't make sense. I've been nothing but blessed, so why's my life a mess? Please tell me, cause I'm sick of thinking, yeah, I'm sick of reaching out for the truth and living life as a fool. Dun, da, 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 da.